Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
After days of briefing and backbiting, Theresa May is attempting to get her team in order. Cabinet met this morning and Theresa May is keen to show that her government is getting on with the job. Yesterday, the Education Secretary, Justine Greening, announced an extra £2.6 billion for schools over the next 2 years, although Labour points out there's no new money as the cash will come from the schools budget. Also yesterday, Transport Secretary Chris Grayling was in the Commons laying out the proposed route for the next phase of the High-Speed 2 rail link, connecting Birmingham with cities in the north of England. And of course, Brexit Secretary David Davis was enjoying the delights of Brussels to launch the second round of formal talks with his EU counterparts. He's called for both sides to get down to business on the negotiations. Mr Davis has his detractors, however. Yesterday, Dominic Cummings, one of the leading figures in the Vote Leave campaign, tweeted that he thought David Davis was thick as mince, lazy as a toad and vain as Narcissus. I wonder what he really thinks. So Theresa May is attempting to get a grip on all the briefings going on in the press. She told a group of Conservative backbenchers last night that there must be no backbiting, no carping, and that the choice was me or Jeremy Corbyn, and nobody wants that. And this morning, in their weekly cabinet meeting, the Prime Minister reinforced the message by reminding her colleagues that their meetings must be kept private. Well, the cabinet meeting has now finished, and our political correspondent Eleanor Garnier joins us from outside number 10. So, Eleanor, was that meeting private, or have you heard the entire contents of the cabinet this morning?
Not yet, Joe, but I wouldn't hold your breath. I think it's a bit like a really tough school where you've got a head teacher who's really pretty weak and all the pupils are kicking off. They've just had their last school assembly of the term and so far none of them have been expelled. All the cabinet ministers seem to have kept their jobs despite some calls overnight in the press for the naughty ones to be kicked out after all that leadership gossip, the leaks from cabinet and all the hostile briefings. Theresa May is trying to get a grip of things, trying to instill some discipline. So we know at cabinet today she was laying down the law a bit, telling her most senior ministers to keep stum as they go away on their summer holidays. She wants everyone to calm down and come back after the holiday, hopefully with a bit of a sense of unity.
Right, well, Eleanor, we can see pictures of members of the cabinet trooping out of the famous black door there. They don't look too unhappy, so maybe she didn't shout at them too much. What about the drinks on the terraces last night at the House of Commons with MPs?
That's right. She's not only telling her senior ministers that they've got to behave and keep stum and stop leaking, but she told Conservative MPs at a summer drinks thing they had last night on the terrace in the House of Commons, they needed to stop carping, stop backbiting, to calm down. She said, go away over the summer holiday, have a really good break, but let's be ready to get down to some serious business when we come back after the summer holiday, when Parliament returns in September.
Eleanor Garnier, outside number 10. Thank you very much. Well, I'm joined now by Conservative MP Nigel Evans. He backed Theresa May for the Conservative leadership. Welcome to the Daily Politics. Let's just talk about education, first of all, and the money that's been announced by Justine Greening. Of course, none of it's new money, is it? As Labour point out, it's all going to be funded without a penny of new money from the Treasury. Is that really going to do it?
Well, the fact is that that money had to come from somewhere. We haven't got the magic money tree. Can I say magic money tree these days?
You can say whatever you like within reason, Nigel.
Thanks, Joe. The fact is the money's got to come from somewhere. And as the Labour Party promised what they'd like during the election, including wiping out people's student debt, and then when asked now where they were going to find the £100 billion from, well, of course, it was an aspiration. The reality of government is that you've got to deliver. And I know from talking to my head teachers during the general election that they were hurting. They needed extra money put in. And so there is a bit of rejigging going on within the department, and that's where the 1.3 billion a year is coming from.
To use your phrase, magic money tree, you managed to find quite a lot of it for the DUP, though, didn't you? It was amazing what you discovered down the back of the sofa.
We wouldn't be in government, Joe, if we hadn't put our hands down the back of that sofa. So it's priorities, one might say. I mean, let's concentrate on education. So you're going to take that money or make savings from the existing schools budget for England. Is it annoying that the money was going to be used for more free schools and now it's being taken away? For me, who believes in in our manifesto promise of getting some more grammar schools where they were wanted, yeah, I am a bit disappointed. But there again, the brutal reality of a minority government is that we can't get through the policies that we originally wanted. You know, that's where we are. Right.
And the pressure, of course, is going to continue from the big spending departments. I mean, the Institute of Fiscal Studies have pointed out it still counts, even with that £2.6 billion over 2 years, as a real terms freeze, not a real terms increase on schools' budgets. So is that really addressing the issue?
Well, it's going in a step in the right direction. It's certainly not stepping backwards where we've been over the last couple of years. And so, yes, there is £1.3 billion extra that's going to be put into education. And it's been, let's say, mildly welcomed already by the profession, which is...
but they want more.
Yeah, of course they want more, and I don't blame them, but... at least it's a step in the right direction.
So would you like to see more?
Yeah, I would like to see more, absolutely. But the reality is, where is it going to come from? And we've just got to ensure that we've got the budget coming up in November. And I think that's probably the appropriate time when we'll find out whether Philip is going to release that firm grip that he's got on the Exchequer.
Right. Do you think he should release the firm grip? I mean, is he listening to the pleas, not just from the sectors themselves, health and education and others, but also from ministers within the Cabinet?
I hope so. I mean, particularly for those who work in teaching at the lower level, those who are earning low levels of money in the National Health Service. We're not talking about the managers, some of whom are earning over £100,000, £200,000, £300,000. We're not talking about these people. We're talking about the ones who are on £20,000 and less.
Right. So you are on the side of Boris Johnson rather than Philip Hammond in this debate?
I'm on the side of the National Health Service and on education. That's who I'm on the side of. I'm not actually picking members of the Cabinet as to whether they are supporting a lifting of the restraint or not, Joe. And that's, you know, one of the reasons we had Theresa at the 1922 drinks last night was to ensure that we got that message across. And of course, Boris was there,
and
David Davis was there, and Philip Hammond were there.
But the last party they were all at together, it seems they fuelled the Sunday paper pages completely with all their gossip. If not they personally, then certainly their people.
It was great to see them there, along with, I think about half the Cabinet were at that drinks reception we had last night. No Prosecco, no warm
cold
Prosecco.
Or warm.
It was chilled champagne, plus beer and red wine and white wine.
Right.
And
times are hard, aren't they, on the terraces in the House of Commons?
Theresa May addressed the 22 and got her point across beautifully, I thought.
All right, well, while you were sipping your cold champagne, to get back to the issue of public sector pay, are public servants overpaid?
No.
So he was wrong, Philip Hammond?
Well, there again, from what I've read in the papers, it was taken out of context. And the fact is, Joe, I shouldn't really know what Philip Hammond is saying within a Cabinet meeting, where you should have the freedom to be able to be absolutely frank in what you say and not expect it to see it appearing on the front page of any newspaper.
Sure, and it's being aired publicly. He didn't deny that he said something along those lines, even if he didn't use the precise wording, to say that they're overpaid. Once you take pensions into account, did he have a point there?
There again, I don't know exactly what he said and in what context he said it, Joe.
Well, he didn't deny it. So let's just say he said, you know, that public sector workers are paid more than private sector workers, says he, when you take pensions into account.
Yeah, well, if that's the reality of it, then that is the reality. But the fact is that I think part of the problem is that when you get partial tidbits fed to newspapers by people who are not on your side, then it's not helpful, is it?
Well, let me tell you what he did say on the Andrew Marr show. Philip Hammond defended his position on the Andrew Marr show, saying public sector pay had raced ahead of the private sector after the economic crash in 2008. And that was a long time ago, of course, but in 2008.
Yes.
Again, are these the sorts of things you want to hear from the Chancellor?
Well, no, the reality is he's the one that's got to ensure that the books are balanced. We've got... at the last count, I think it was £1.7 trillion that we've in debt. And
who's been in government since 2010?
Well, all this has been built up, of course, under the Blair and Brown regime.
So you're still blaming the former Labour government?
I certainly am. Where blame lies, they should have it there. And of course, the interest we're paying on that, Joe, is about £43 billion a year. And so Philip Hammond is absolutely right to ensure that we're pulling back on how much money we're borrowing to try and then get to a situation where we can start to write off the debt. It's going to benefit the National Health Service, education and the public sector if we're able to do this. Right,
but you said you do want him to release his iron grip on the finances.
At the lower levels, at the lower levels.
So you would like to see the pay freeze taken off, or more money being given to the lowest paid?
Yeah, personally, Joe, what I would prefer is some of these managers who are earning eye-watering salaries to get nothing, and then the people who are lower down, the ones who actually do the dirty jobs, as I call them, they should get more. Right.
Let's talk about the backbiting, the carping. Do you think anything Theresa May says now, whether it was in Cabinet or last night when you were there with all those Cabinet ministers, will have an iota of difference?
Yeah, because we're angry. People on the backbenches are coming up to me. I'm Joint Secretary of the 1922 Committee, and people are telling me we shouldn't be having to listen to briefings or plottings going on either directly by Cabinet ministers or indeed people on their behalf with or without their permission.
Right. How difficult is this? You were briefly leader yourself in Australia. How difficult is it to discipline the troops?
Pretty difficult. There's no doubt about it. So the equivalent of the Conservative Party in Australia is called the Liberal Party. And these parties are parties that believe at their very heart in individual freedom, which seems to be freedom of speech and expression. So you can't corral them into some sort of Stalinist regime. And for a leader, it's a huge challenge to try to exercise at least a degree of discipline. But look, let's face it, a political party is made up of a large number of people who have a large number of different views. If only one view counted, there'd only be one person who ever spoke and ever made the decisions.
Sure.
So you get competition for, just listening to Nigel talking about public sector pay. You get competition about the allocation of scarce resources.
And that's fine. Of course, everyone knows that there is a difference of opinion. The point is, should it be aired publicly from people who are supposed to be under what's known as collective responsibility?
Well, certainly leaking from Cabinet in Australia is regarded as a pretty serious offence.
What happens to those who do that?
Can you ever prove who did it? I suppose if you could prove it, but in all of my years, I spent nearly a dozen years in the Cabinet. In all of my years, there weren't many leaks from our Cabinet, but when there were leaks, I never knew the culprit to be caught.
I fought hard to ensure that we got back to Cabinet governance after the general election, when we found out what was really going on, and people who were not part of the Cabinet were having more power than the Cabinet and telling them what to do. But with that comes responsibility, and they've got to learn that responsibility, and they've got to ensure that they can be critical, but within Cabinet.
Right.
And I don't expect to read it on the front page
But
of the
Theresa
Times.
May's authority has been weakened, and she was the one who called a snap election after saying that she wouldn't do it. And then she lost the Tory majority. So you can understand why people might be upset.
Yeah.
You are, as you said, joint chair, I think, of the 1922...
No, I'm joint secretary.
Joint secretary of the 1922 committee of Tory MPs. How many letters have been sent to you?
They wouldn't be sent to me, they would be sent to the chairman.
And how many?
I don't know. I wouldn't ask Graham, and if I did, I wouldn't
You wouldn't
expect him to
ask?
tell me.
You
No, I
wouldn't ask?
No, I wouldn't
Really?
expect him to tell me either. But the...
Has he been sent any, do you know?
I don't know. The vast majority, though, of backbenchers are supporting the Prime Minister. And indeed, I've got to say it's rare. Normally the men in grey suits, as we're called, go up to the Prime Minister and tell them when it's time to go and make way for somebody else. This time we've gone up to the Prime Minister and said to her, we are supporting you 100%, Prime Minister, and we want you to use the message from the 1922 committee to tell your Cabinet, which is clearly done today, to get in line.
All right. I mean, Alexander Downer said, of course, the problem is you never know who's doing the leaking, but people have a pretty good idea. Should ministers be sacked if they are found to be briefing?
I believe that they should be. Yes, I do. That if they're found to be briefing against one another and against the Prime Minister, I don't think they should last any longer. And the Prime Minister does have the authority to do that. She'll have the backing of the 1922 if that's what she does.
Did she seem OK, the Prime Minister, at the terrace?
Absolutely superb, and telling... also, as well, Joe, there were members of Parliament who had lost their seats in that room last night. She made a special a point of reflecting about the fact that they were there.
Because she didn't, of course, in the immediate aftermath.
And they lost their jobs. Well, I don't want anybody else to lose their jobs. I don't want an early leadership election. I don't want an early general election. And the best way to do that is by the Cabinet getting in line and supporting the Prime Minister.
You've made it all very clear. Nigel Evans, thank you.
Thanks, Jo.
More now on the PM telling her Cabinet to stop undermining each other in public following a series of leaks. It's led to more questions about her leadership. Let's look at some of the flashpoints she's going to face over the summer. Today's final Cabinet means senior ministers will soon leave Westminster for the holidays, when rifts may come even further into the open. Brexit negotiations are continuing to take place through August. The EU has insisted there will be no talks about a new relationship before the divorce settlement is agreed. In September, Parliament returns. Soon after, the government's bill repealing 12,000 EU regulations will begin to be debated. That's in September. And towards the end of the month, German parliamentary elections will reveal who the final players in Brussels will be, all building up to the Conservative Party conference in October, when Mrs May will need to have a party at least outwardly united. Theresa May has told her Cabinet they need to show strength and unity following a series of leaks to the newspapers. Last night, the Prime Minister told her party their bickering could result in Jeremy Corbyn winning power. So could the cracks really form new path into number 10 for the Labour rival? Well, let's talk to news editor at Huck magazine, Michael Segalov, and Caroline Farrow, who is a blogger at Conservative Woman. Hello to you both. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on Sky News this afternoon. Ladies first, Caroline, what on earth is she going to do to try and steady the ship?
I think she's going to be absolutely fine. I mean, let's think, we're going into parliamentary recess. We've got the whole of the summer ahead. I think she's quite right to clamp down on some of these leaks, which are damaging the Conservative Party. But I think what she needs to do is just not to panic and to say, OK, you know, I'm in charge. I mean, let's be clear. She has won a mandate. She's won a much bigger mandate than Jeremy Corbyn. You know, she has won far more seats than he did, and when you look at the 2010 election, Corbyn was calling that result a disaster. Now this time round, he's only won another 4 seats, and of course we've got this morning the Electoral Commission saying that there's this big scandal that some students, or thousands of students potentially, have cast their vote twice. So I think Theresa May just needs to settle down. Remember, she has got that mandate, and you know, just continue the course that she's on.
OK. Michael?
I mean, if I was Theresa May, I'd be panicking right now. She's about to go into the negotiations for Brexit, the biggest that have faced this country for a generation. And she not only has a divided cabinet and a divided party, she hasn't got the support of the wider general public, and there's clearly no plan for how those negotiations are going to play out. So I think to say that Theresa May shouldn't be panicking is an absurdity. And what I think we should be looking at more broadly is what the Conservative Party are doing. Let's be clear, it wasn't just Theresa May who lost the general election. It was the Conservative Party with no plan,
To be fair, she did
no
win,
suggestions.
actually. No, I mean, you know, I can't let you get away with that, Michael, because she won rather than lost.
I mean, she lost on her own terms, though, didn't she? She set out to say she was going to increase her majority. She was coming in to, you know, clamp down and make sure that when they went into Brexit negotiations, the Tories had a say. And they failed to win a majority. And that was the reason for her calling the election. Okay. So I'd say she lost it. OK. Well,
Caroline, I mean, it is a fair point that she may be in number 10, but she's held below the waterline. It's just a matter of time now.
No, I don't think it is a matter of time. And she didn't lose the election per se. I mean, let's remember that Labour got 53 seats fewer than the Tories. You know, they haven't got enough votes to form a government. They would need the DUP, who they've burnt their bridges there. They would need the SNP. They would need the Liberal Democrats. They would need every single party to come into coalition with them. Then we've also got this issue this morning. The Labour Party have rowed back. Jeremy Corbyn promised that he would deal with the issue of student debt. He said, you know, all these young people, they've been burdened by the time that they started their degrees, and you know, this is something that we will deal with. This is a promise. And now all of a sudden the Labour Party is saying, well, actually it's an aspiration. Now, does he really think that...
Caroline, to be fair, it's not about Jeremy Corbyn. It's about Theresa May and the fact that she can't keep her troops in line.
But I mean, every single government has a little bit of leaking, but let's look again at the Labour Party. The Labour Party are far from united over Brexit. You've got about 46 Labour MPs who
Caroline, we're not talking about Labour, we're talking about the Tories and the fact that she is held below the waterline. We're going to bring you back in a second, Michael. Sorry about this, but seriously, she needs her troops on side. If everything you're saying about the Labour Party is right, why aren't they behaving themselves? They're not. They're undermining her. They're undermining the second in command, the Chancellor, and it's a mess.
I wouldn't say that it was a mess, but yes, and this is why, you know, she has issued various memos, and she said any more leaking and people will be fired. And I think probably that's something that she absolutely needs to stand by. You know, if she discovers if the source of the leaks are discovered, then yes, you know, she needs to fell the axe and you know, get rid of those who are undermining her. But you know, this is all part and part of politics, and the Conservative Party know full well that they haven't really at the moment got a genuine contender to replace Theresa May. Now, it might be that something lines up over the summer. I know there's been a lot of talk about Jacob Rees-Mogg, quite how serious that's going to turn out to be and whether or not he'll turn out to be a strong contender. But you know, the general election has taken place, and it seems absurd. I think we've all got election fatigue, and it seems absurd to be trying to force another election, and I think that Labour will find that it's counterproductive for them as well.
Okay. I wouldn't put any money on Jacob Rees-Mogg, I'm just saying. Michael, as far as opposition is concerned, you know, we've seen that they did an awful lot better, but they didn't win the last general election, and Mrs May is still in power, and the fact that we haven't got a strong opposition means that they are bickering in cabinet.
Well, I wouldn't say we've not got a strong opposition right now. I think that's really unfair to say, considering that in every poll that's coming out at the moment, Labour are ahead of the Tories. The cabinet stands united. Jeremy Corbyn is seen as a popular leader who could be going into Westminster.
Okay,
I think,
well,
you know, the Tories have...
Why, if he's so popular and he's so good at it, why did he not get the keys to number 10?
Yeah, no, I totally accept that Labour didn't win the general election. They won on the Conservatives' terms, but not on their own. And I think that if you look at polling now, and if you ask me if they'd had an extra week of campaigning, the outcome might have been different. But this is about the Conservative Party. Let's be clear, they're the party in government. They're the party going into Brexit negotiations. And right now, as has been said, there is no contender to take over from Theresa May. Jacob Rees-Mogg bizarrely being bandied about as the best replacement. And I think if and when that crumbles, if and when Theresa May's tenure falls apart, and I say actually it's a matter of when rather than if, there should be another general election and Labour are ready and waiting.
Next election could be as early as October, Caroline, and I did actually interview Lord Heseltine yesterday, and he said if there is an election as early as October, the Tories won't be in power.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
OK, I was making the point that Lord Heseltine, who I spoke to yesterday, said if there is another election in October, then the Tories will not be in power.
I think Lord Heseltine is just being pessimistic. I mean, it's a possibility, and of course, it's something that the Tory party and the country needs to be alert to. I mean, Labour have got spending plans of 500 billion, you know, which aren't fully costed and which are causing quite a lot of alarm. So it could just be that he's saying that to kind of really get everybody to stick together, to kind of increase unity. But I cannot see at the moment. I cannot see Jeremy Corbyn getting into number 10. He didn't manage it a few weeks ago, therefore I don't see why he's suddenly going to manage it now.
OK, Michael, I mean, Labour Party is hardly a party of unity, is it?
Well, I think the Labour Party right now is much more united than the Conservatives. And again, I think it's bizarre to be going back into general election discussions about the Labour Party not having a fully costed manifesto when the Tories had no costings whatsoever. The Labour Party not having a plan for Britain when the Tories wanted to snatch lunches from children and implement a dementia tax. But you're also right, politics changes fast. We can't deny that. A few months ago, Theresa May had a strong majority, which she threw away on a vanity project. So to say that in the next general election, looking at the polling now, looking at how popular the manifesto was, to say that Jeremy Corbyn's Labour Party couldn't win an election is an absurdity.
Caroline?
I don't think it is an absurdity at all, particularly when you look at the vote share. So, you know, the Conservatives did get by far the much larger share of the vote. And then when you also look at the fact that the Electoral Commission this morning have been saying that there is a massive scandal of students.
No, allegedly is what they said. They didn't say there was, they said allegedly.
Well, if we have got this double voting scandal, then it may well be that actually the Conservative share of the vote is much larger. And there is nothing like an election election, if it does happen, and I don't think it will, because I think the country has got election fatigue, but there is nothing like an election to actually concentrate minds. And what the Tory party really need to do is actually go back to conservative Tory values, rather than kind of, at the moment, they're following this slight policy of appeasement. You know, I think there is a sense that Theresa May is nervous.
Okay, so
but
go back to Tory party
this
values and get rid of their leader at the same time, because that's what's going to happen, isn't it?
I think that's really, really unlikely for the reasons I said. They don't have, at the moment, a really strong contender to replace Theresa May. They really don't. And there isn't this level of dissatisfaction. I think what needs to happen is that the whole Brexit negotiations just need to go ahead and be negotiated, and then everybody will know where they stand. At the moment, it seems to be that there's a lot of filibustering. People are trying to throw a spanner in the works.
Final thought from you, Michael. As far as Jeremy Corbyn is concerned, they might be singing his name at Glastonbury, but the country wasn't. Does Labour need to replace their leader if there's another election?
Oh, I think there's no calls now whatsoever for Labour to replace their leader. He's cemented himself as a popular leader. But I just want to pick up on that fatigue point, because I think whilst people might be tired of elections and tired of going to the polling booths, people are mostly tired of a failing Tory austerity agenda that isn't actually speaking to people anymore. And what Labour have been offering, and what Corbyn has been offering, what the polling is now showing that people are reacting and responding to, is an exciting plan for this country that actually has an opportunity to offer something.
Okay.
And if you ask the Tories what they've got, then there's nothing there.
We've overrun on time. It was good to talk to both of you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on Sky News this afternoon. Thank you. Other news, Theresa May has warned ministers in her cabinet to stop briefing against each other in the press. Following a series of damaging leaks, the PM has told her colleagues that the Conservative Party needs to show strength and unity, and that it starts with them.
Morning, Mr Gove, are you the leak? Morning, Mr Fox. Mr Gove, are you loyal to the Prime Minister? Mr Johnson, are you loyal to the Prime Minister? Mr Johnson, are you the leak?
Speak to the Conservative backbencher Charles Walker, who is joining us now. Hello to you, Mr Walker. Thank you for joining us. My goodness me, they need to get their house in order at number 10, don't they?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch your question. I do apologise.
My question is that they need to get their house in order at number 10 before we find ourselves as a country with another general election, and we don't want one, we're told.
Well, we're not going to have another general election for many years. I think the Prime Minister is doing an excellent job. She is demonstrating her commitment to public service and the national interest. And I just hope that those cabinet colleagues who are promoting their own interest over the national interest leave off from doing that over the summer recess, and then actually when they come back in September for the start of the autumn Parliament, focus on their portfolios.
Just to clarify, you think the Prime Minister is doing a good job, an excellent job, you said?
I think the Prime Minister is doing an absolutely excellent job, and I'm full of admiration for her.
Why did she not do better in the election then, I wonder?
Well, I mean, you've spent the last 5 weeks discussing that, and
well,
I thought we were here.
Sir, what do you think?
We're here to discuss going forward where the Conservative Party's at, and the Conservative Party needs to be united going forward, and we need to get on with the business of governing.
If she's doing an excellent job, though, why didn't she do better in the general election? I don't get it.
We are the party of government, and that is what we're going to be doing for the next 5 years.
Only just. Only just.
We're the party of government. I mean, you're not just the party of government, you're either the party of government or you're not the party of government. So Labour's not the party of government, and we are the party of government.
You are the party of government because you've got the DUP to help you. This is what Lord Heseltine said to me yesterday. Have a quick listen.
This is about Britain's national self-interest for generations to come. And so, I mean, basically, the choice that many people in the Conservative Party are having to make is my party or my country. And the issue of my country will always take supremacy in such a context, and so it should.
So basically, Mr Walker, too many of your colleagues are choosing their party above their country.
Well, a few of them seem to be doing that. As I said, the Prime Minister seems to be choosing the country, but some of our colleagues, just a few, give the impression that they are choosing their own personal ambition over ambition for the country as a whole, and that is disappointing.
So instead of being around the cabinet table, they should be on the back benches instead, surely?
Well, if they feel that the cabinet position they've got is not offering them the fulfilment that they desire, then perhaps they could return to the backbenches. We'd welcome them back on the backbenches, and there's many talented colleagues on the backbenches who would be more than happy to do their jobs for them. I mean, these people in the cabinet are talented people, but nobody is irreplaceable in politics. And what most backbenchers want, what most ministers want, is for a united Conservative Party to get on with the business of governing. And what they don't want to hear is people sort of behind closed doors or talking to journalists off the record, creating difficulties for the party at a time where actually what the country wants us to do is get on with the business of improving the NHS, which is already fantastic but could be better, looking at education, growing the economy, getting on with Brexit. These are the things that most people, I think, who are watching what's going on in Westminster want Westminster to be getting on with.
We saw what happened with John Major when there was a briefing against him from his own cabinet, and he had a much bigger majority than your present Prime Minister does.
Yeah.
What are you going to say to, or what do you say to those within cabinet who are basically trying to hang the Prime Minister and the Chancellor out to dry?
But the alternative to John Major was the very moderate Mr. Blair. The alternative to our Prime Minister is Jeremy Corbyn and his Marxist mates. The best chief whip the Conservative Party has at the moment is Jeremy Corbyn. We have a very good chief whip, but Jeremy Corbyn does tend to focus the minds of most Conservative colleagues, because the alternative to a Conservative government is too awful to contemplate.
I suppose another way of looking at that might be, Mr. Walker, that your Prime Minister is weak, and as a result, those within her cabinet, around her cabinet table, are trying to vie for position to be the next Prime Minister of the Conservative Party. If she was a stronger leader, then that wouldn't be happening, would it?
Well, I think the Prime Minister is a strong leader, and most Conservative backbenchers do. And the 1922 committee made clear to her when we met her last week that if she has to get rid of a cabinet member who can't play the team game, then she will have her support, have our support in doing that. This is deadly serious business. Running the country is a deadly serious business, and people need to set aside their own personal ambition and get on with doing the very best for UK PLC.
But you can appreciate that when the public are looking at what's happening and then reading the Sunday papers, and they can see this Eton mess that is causing absolute turmoil within the cabinet. And we don't know who's briefing against her. We've got a very good idea who might be briefing against her, but they are the very sort of people who want to have the top job. You're saying that the 1922 committee are warning people to either toe the party line or get back onto the backbenches, but that doesn't seem to be a threat that seems to be concerning them unduly.
Well, anybody who is caught in the open talking up their own position and briefing against the Prime Minister is finished as far as ever getting the top job is concerned at any stage in the future. So I suspect if those in the Cabinet can't zip it up and get on with their day-to-day jobs, then when it does come to choosing a new leader of the Conservative Party, we will skip a generation and go for a fresher, more collegiate face.
Oh, just develop that argument for me a little further.
Well, I mean, obviously, people in the Cabinet are in a leadership position, but if they can't behave as leaders should behave and put the national interest first, if at some stage in the future, as there is with all political parties, there is a vacancy at the top, then I suspect the person who will fill that vacancy will not be someone from the current generation of Cabinet Ministers. As you like to term it in the media, we will skip a generation and look for a fresher face.
And do you think that that is what is in danger of happening just at the moment?
I think it's a very real prospect. I think it is a very real prospect. Conservative members of Parliament, most Conservative members of Parliament, whether they hold ministerial position or backbenchers, humble backbenchers like myself, want the government to get on with the business of governing. That is what the Prime Minister is doing, and that is what most Cabinet members are doing. But it does seem that there are a few Cabinet members who are distracted by other less important things, such as their own career advancement. And that is not to be tolerated within the current Conservative Party.
So you're putting them on notice?
I think a number of colleagues have put them on notice, but we're all getting pretty fed up. It is a tiny minority of people who are creating difficulties. I mean, the real story is what's going to happen within the Labour Party over the next few months as the purge starts of moderate Labour MPs. So Labour's problems are much bigger than ours, and I think we need to get on with governing and allow the Labour Party to tear itself apart in the months and years ahead.
Care to name any names of Cabinet Ministers that need to start towing the party line?
No, because to be honest, I don't know who these people are. I'm just aware that there's a lot of sound and fury, and I don't know whether they're promoting that sound and fury or not, but if they have any influence over those that are, they should tell them to shut up. Because actually, if any current cabinet minister wants to be a prime minister in the future, what is required from them is loyalty and a sense of commitment to the national interest.
Okay. Don't want to speculate on any names because I think we can get through a few between us,
you
can't
can
we?
you can speculate on the names.
Okay, it's good to talk to you. Thanks for taking the time. We appreciate it. Thank you.